I just want to call the meeting to order. We're starting a few minutes late. It's 6:34. Welcome everybody to 2017 with your library with Measure Y passed. So it'll be a shining year for the library. So I think everybody but Paul.
We're going to dial in for Paul for this part. Can you go for it?
Okay, if you.
Just a moment.
And then we're going to call.
That is just a moment.
Thank you for calling the City Manager's office. We are currently closed. Our
That extension is not valid. Just a moment.
Thank you for calling the City Manager's office. We are
Vicki, do you want to wait until we come back from closed session and maybe the details can be worked out? Thanks. All right, so I wanted to, Paul Grill will be joining us by phone later. But I wanted to give this to see if there should be any adjustments to the agenda made tonight. Commissioner Garcia?
I would like to move that all the action items be moved to discussion items and that they go before the director's report, but that we honor that the update on a potential partnership between Sonoma County Library and the city, that if that individual is here, that they go first, and then after that, all the action items, let us discuss those. Thank you for your consideration.
Do I hear any objections to this proposed change to the agenda?
I'll second if you're looking for a second.
I'm not sure that we... No, by motion. Item 12.
Item number 12. Okay, that's all.
Yeah. So seeing no objections, I think that we will go ahead and make that change. I don't think we need to vote on it. Yes. All right, so any announcements?
Yes, in February, we will be hearing from the Roseland Coalition, Pat Kuda, who is sitting right over there, and she will do a presentation on the Roseland Library, the permanent Roseland Library, the support from the community, and the fundraising. So stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Okay. And any other announcements? Seeing none, are there any members of the public who wish to address the commission regarding items not on the agenda? Now is the time to come down and request recognition. Seeing nobody approaching the commission, we will now adjourn to closed session. Sorry, thank you. So we will return here It doesn't have a time as to, no earlier than 7 p.m. No earlier. So we will be probably gone for longer than 7 p.m. I don't know do you have an approximate time for either of these closed sessions? So we probably will be gone for about an hour, I would assume. So we will reconvene no earlier than 7:30. So, pursuant to, let's see, it is 8:22, and I think we're welcoming Paul Grill by phone. Hi, Paul.
Helena.
Reporting out on the closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.1. This is item 5 on your agenda. Let's see. So the commission met to discuss public employee evaluation, and no action was taken. And pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6, the commission discussed labor relations and salary schedule with Director Lear and CFO Neiman. And no action. Some direction was given to come back in February with an agenda item for the commission to vote on. And a little bit later, I think some policies will be revised. The personnel policies for library management employees will be revised and brought back to the commission. So moving on to item 6, library advisory boards and Friends of the Library. Are there is there any member from any lab who wants to make a presentation at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to commission and liaison reports.
Madam Chair, may I suggest, given the late hour, that we give those reports at our next meeting? Or later, huh? Yeah.
Or later today? Yes, let's push that back to after the discussion items.
Thank you.
So that, unless there are any objections.
No, but I really do want to have the reports at tonight's meeting.
Okay. So this takes us to item 8, approval of the minutes. The commission will review and approve the minutes from the prior meeting in summary format. This is item 8.1, the meetings from December 5th. I see a question. Commissioner May.
I have an addition, a change.
Okay.
It's item number 7.2.3 on page 7 of the packet. It says Commissioner May is collecting research for the Standard Operating Procedures Committee. I'm collecting research for the Library Advocacy Committee.
Jane, were you able to find that? Okay, for the Advocacy Committee, okay. Any other corrections?
I move to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay. That's a motion by Commissioner Ebright, a second by Commissioner May. All in favor?
Aye.
Hey.
Thank you. That takes us to Item number 9, correspondence and press coverage. I don't recall that there was any this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but are there binders or, I'm sorry, with the press and, no. Okay.
But one of the press coverages was in yesterday's Press Democrat, so.
There was that.
January 4, we also had a nice little article about page 3 of the first section of the press. About bibliophiles rejoice.
Yes, about Measure Y. And Commissioner, what's your name?
Mackenzie said in the town section of Sunday, December 18th, there was a great article about the gingerbread house workshops that were throughout the county, and I had this as part of my presentation. I was just going to thank Sandra Breedlove, one of the children's librarians at River Park, Katati, who coordinated this across all the libraries, and looks very cool and got a lot of feedback about it. Thanks.
Yes, and I do want to mention that there has been a lot of really great positive press about the library and the passage of the measure, among other many interesting things the library is doing. So now that moves us on to the consent calendar. Are there any commission members or who want to request that an item be removed from the calendar and have it placed with the action items?
I have a point of order question. As I look through this collection of items, some of them are in the form of a resolution. And I don't know whether a resolution requires a voice vote for yes and yay and nay. And that, I just have a question about that. I think,
It
yes.
looks like it does.
I had the same question, and I asked Linda Shilkin, our county counsel.
Right.
And she said that the resolutions can go on the consent calendar.
Okay.
So
then if somebody wants to deny the vote, they would have to ask to have it taken off the consent calendar and voted on by hand.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, that was my question.
All right. Are there any items that any commissioner wishes to remove that from the consent calendar?
I'd like to remove, just for comment, the resolution on the State Board of Equalization contract.
If it gets removed, it gets removed.
Right.
Okay. So you want it down in discussion items?
No, it should be an action item.
Okay. So which one is that? Is it 10.2?
We're moving to number 12.
Okay. All right. So 10.1, which is approved resolution for the appropriations limit, and 10.3, approved resolution for examination of sales tax records, and 10.4, approval of the amendment of Nationwide Retirement Solutions are all approved and passed. And that takes us to item 12, the discussion items. And we are going to start, if I can look at my mapping here. We are going to start with the Roseland, I don't see them. Update on potential partnership between the Sonoma County Library and the City of Santa Rosa to create digital media centers, and you're right, okay, and provide digital media education in our libraries. I'm sorry, I misread that. So are you Eric McHenry? Come on down.
So we're at 11.3.
Great, thank you. I'm Eric McHenry. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the City of Santa Rosa. And thanks for allowing me to come talk with you tonight. It's a pretty exciting subject for us. Director Lear and I have been speaking over the last probably 6 months off and on about a way to get more video training and video access to our City of Santa Rosa residents. And so this topic is talking about that. As a bit of information, I will be giving a similar presentation to our City Council on January 24th, giving them an update of not only this, but a little
Excuse
bit.
me, would you turn on your mic? It's on? The people can't hear you in the audience.
You may have
It's
to
red.
pump it up over there or stand closer. Is that a little better? Okay, awesome. Sorry about that. The agreement, the objectives of the agreement we're trying to put forward is to have the creation of a new public access facilities at the City of Santa Rosa located branches of the library. And, you know, frankly, Director Lear and I think it would be wonderful for it to be broadened beyond the City of Santa Rosa. But from a financial standpoint, the funds that our city has to offer, we're asking that those stay within the City of Santa Rosa general 4 library branches. Let me give a bit of a background of the funding that we have and why we think this opportunity has become available. The City of Santa Rosa, like every other city in California, gets a collection of franchise or public education and government PEG fees. And these come from your cable bill, or as they call it now, the video services bill. So whether you have a cable from Comcast or whether you have it from AT&T, there's a certain percentage of the funds that by FCC law goes to the municipalities or the county, the jurisdiction. And those funds are intended for the proliferation and the building of public access facilities for people to look at, learn about, and distribute video content. So from the City of Santa Rosa, we get about $400 and something thousand annually from those fees, and that are dedicated just toward purchases of capital associated with public education and government. Okay, so we get about $400,000, the city does, plus we get another about $1 million, which is general fund related revenue from these Comcast and AT&T. So we're going to be talking really just around that $400,000 that the city gets. It's our interest of trying to take these funds and get them into better use in our community. And one of the ideas that Director Lear and I had was to take these capital funds from the city and invest them in the library branches such that the library could build services around video training. We think that, well, the amount, it will be to be determined. Director Lear and his staff are trying to determine what the appropriate level and timing of the financial investment in the branches is. But the city is prepared to contribute up to about $150,000 on an annual basis to the 4 branches in the City of Santa Rosa focused on public access and media training and media literacy. And again, this has to go to our council on the 24th. It's our hope that they will also agree to move this forward along with some other initiatives around public education and government. One of the things for me personally, why I was so excited to hear about it is that I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and where I grew up, the library was the center of my learning. You know, I remember being dropped off to the library when I was a kid, and we checked out books and read books. And when I spoke with Director Lear and his staff about the relevancy of the library in technology, I was really excited. Your strategic plan that you guys did about 1.5 years ago was pretty impressive, and it dovetails nicely with our objective of getting video training. You know, any of you who have kids or no kids or grandkids, that you see them as they focus on video content compared to textual content is amazing. And we think that to the extent that we can get more people exposed to, trained in, ask questions about, experiment around video content, it'd be really great for our community. So it dovetails nicely with the library's mission. The funds are dedicated for that by the FCC, and it matches really nicely well with where our city wants to make some investments in our community. The next steps for us, as I mentioned, we have a draft agreement that Director Lear and his staff are looking at. We hope to get that completed within the next couple of weeks. We hope our City Council will be in a position to move this forward on the 24th. And after that, we'll move into implementation phase. And Director Lear and his staff will direct that work. From the city standpoint, we'll be involved as, I won't say a silent partner, but we're just a very excited partner and help as needed. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. I didn't really know exactly, but I'm here to answer questions. And I will say again, this is something that we probably could not have envisioned a couple of years ago here in the city. We're really overjoyed with you all and with Director Lear and his staff. It's a pretty exciting organization now, which we're looking forward to partnering more strongly with.
Wow.
Thank you for that information. I think, Brett, is there a plan to have something perhaps in other branches too? Not that the city would be paying for it, but...
Yeah, so, Eric and I Eric's been kind enough to speak with some of the county folks because the county also receives, the same money. So I intend to meet with the county and see if they'd be interested in doing something similar because, equity is important to me and I'm sure everyone else. So, as we install these labs in Santa Rosa, I would want to see similar labs appearing throughout the county. So there's more conversations to be had throughout the county about what we're doing with Santa Rosa.
Are there any questions from the commission?
I have a question. What was the amount? There was like $400,000. Am I in order here?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Grill. So your question had to do with the amount of money?
Yes, it did. And was that $400,000 available just for this project in the city of Santa Rosa?
May I answer that question?
Yes.
Yes, the $400,000 is a total sum that comes into the city. The agreement is drafted, puts it up to $150,000 for the Sonoma County Library annually.
Okay. And so, Brett, what do you, if you extrapolated that into 3 or 4 libraries in the city, what would it take to accomplish a similar goal in dollars to the rest of our libraries?
Well, Vicki, the IT director, and Vicki started to kind of develop specifications of the type of equipment, she would like to see, in these media labs. And what have you estimated right now, Vicki, around 70,000, 75,000 per location? Yeah. Eric's referring to them as kind of video labs, but, my hope would be that, we'd be sure to offer a certain number of classes and hands-on help around video content creation. But certainly, once the equipment's in place, they're really going to be very nice computer labs that would also allow other types of use as well. Fortunately, as well, with Measure Y in the expenditure plan, one of the main sections is around innovation and technology. So I think we're fortunate enough now to soon have operating funds as well that could put media labs perhaps in some of the other locations where either the county or the local municipalities weren't willing to offer up the franchise fees.
Commissioner Ebright.
Thank you very kindly.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Commissioner Ebright, you had a question?
Yeah, Mr. McHenry, thanks very much for being here. I will say that Commissioner Garcia and I have met with Mr. McHenry about this, me being appointed by the City of Santa Rosa and Commissioner Garcia, City of Santa Rosa and the County of Sonoma appointee. I just want to be clear, the $150,000 is for capital expenses only, so there is that limitation on it. That's correct?
Yes, that is correct. That's by FCC regulations.
Okay, so this wouldn't go towards staffing or personnel or anything like that. It's strictly for capital expenses.
Yes, and that is the joy and the challenge combined in those two, yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, somewhere I had this confused in my mind with the recording of our meetings here. This has nothing to do with that, right? That's a totally different media lab that, right, records meetings.
It is. Well, let me take the opportunity to ad-lib a little bit on this one. It is completely separate. comma. One thing that was really interesting is that we have some very qualified people back there recording our meeting right now, and some of the training opportunities, I think, really are around having people perhaps shadow learn. I mean, to have a facility like this where there's live broadcast, I remember many of you have probably gone back there. It's actually pretty sophisticated back there and pretty interesting. And so over time, perhaps there's an opportunity to have some people learn about how to run a production facility like this, working with our team. There's a lot of interesting ideas, but it is a very separate thing.
Okay. So a digital media center and providing digital media education in our libraries, like who would that be and what would it be like? I'm just not clear on...
Well, like a lot of things, this is evolving in real time. So when I was a director in Florida, we created what we called Idea Labs in some of our locations, and they were places where it was important to me that, if a teenager wanted to get into film school, but she didn't have access to equipment to create a short film, that this lab would enable people to do things like that or record a song. We also tried to have software available that, such as AutoCAD and things like that might help professionals, again, that might not have access to certain software at home. But along with that, the staffing piece is really important because you need someone that knows how to use that software and technology. So as we bring these labs online, at the same time, I'm going to be talking with management staff around, what type of staffing as well, do we need in our libraries to support these labs. In Florida, we also recruited a collection of volunteers that were tech savvy to work in the labs. But certainly, when I first started meeting with Eric, my question immediately was, is there, money available for the staffing piece? But it is something that we'll need to address.
Well, my finally follow-up question to that is, given our limited space and all of our problems with space in all of our branches, where would these be and how much space would they take up and what do they look like? Yeah, I've been talking to Vicki about this, and I'd want the majority of the equipment to be able to be set up and taken down so that, because they would be put in our meeting rooms, the equipment. So, I'd want it to be on collapsible tables and, quite a few laptops and things like that, so that the vast majority of the equipment, kind of like we do at Roseland with the little lab we have there, where things could be moved aside to where when the meeting room is used for something else, that it could be.
Commissioner May?
I have two things. One of them is wow. And again, thank you, Brett, for stepping out in the community to make this happen. It's exciting. I just wanted to double check. Are you including Roseland as the fourth library in Sonoma?
Yes.
I mean, this Santa Rosa?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to check.
Yes, and to answer your question, Commissioner McKenzie, some of this is some direct experience out of the Community Media Center that was over at the school, at the Santa Rosa High School. And if you look now at the editing bays, the editing stations over there, what they are nowadays, it's a nice a Macintosh computer or a Dell computer with headphones, some speakers, a microphone. The editing suite, the footprint has changed dramatically from what it was 20 years ago. And so we believe that whether it be in the library branches or whether it be at some of our recreation and parks facilities, which we're also starting to talk about within the city, we think that the footprint can be a lot smaller. The challenge, though, is that the equipment, even though it's come down quite a bit in price, is still of a cost that is out of the range of a lot of people of our public. And so we think if we can provide that equipment with the software, with the accessories, the microphones, the speakers, the headsets, good internet strength, good internet bandwidth that will enable people to do things they couldn't just do with an iPhone, 7 Plus, frankly. So we're pretty excited. It's a bit of a pilot, but we're excited about the concept here at the city.
In the past, at commission meetings, we've had presentations. And I think it would be really wonderful is when and if this takes off, if somewhere along the line we do get a look at one of the videos or a good example of some of the things that are happening, because this is a public meeting, and I think it would be really wonderful for the public to broaden their view of what libraries can be and what they are. And I would love to have a report at some time on how it's going.
We would love to join you in that report.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Hauser.
I think that we're potentially talking about having to pay for staff. So I think this is a great idea, but we need to have some kind of report from our staff about what our cost in addition might be for each of these types of labs, video labs, or whatever they are. And I'm assuming if we're talking about $70,000 or $75,000 per facility, and you're talking about $150,000, we're talking about a 2-year program for the 4 libraries in Santa Rosa.
We haven't put a time frame on it. We're saying roughly $150,000 per year.
Okay.
I don't think we put an end date on it. The dollars from the city comes in on an annual basis. Okay. And we'd look at it over the first couple of years to make sure it's working for both the library, our community, and for the city. And I could easily see it being extended if it was working.
Okay, so you start off with 1 or 2, and then it would expand potentially. Before I would approve it, though, I really want to know what our cost that's going to go along with it for staffing is going to be, because we think we have a lot of money, but it may be less than we think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
I think we're finished with questions. Okay. Paul, Commissioner Grill, did you have any last thing?
I did not. Thank you kindly.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. So this takes us to, let's see. We're moving items 12.1, 2, and 3 up prior to the director's report. Was that the request that I'd gotten? Okay.
Yes, the action items go before.
Okay, so this is item 12.1, approval of the final facilities master plan. Right, and it's moved to discussion. All of these. Hi, welcome.
Hello, Commissioners, Chair. I'm Fergus Wilson, Facility Manager, Sonoma County Library. I've been working on this facility master plan since I came on board July 11th last year. And I pretty much finalized what I seen should be prioritized, talking to staff, talking to the community, and looking at the various libraries. And what I did here is I completed, I'm sure everybody's got one of Fergus's Reader's Digest version. So basically, what I did with Fergus's facilities master plan right here is I took the essence, the most important things out of the major facilities master plan that we have, and I put it in a context whereas people that don't want to dig through this, they will dig this, and the first questions that they would ask me, the feedback I got is, where is my library? Where is the order where it's going to get refreshed or repaired? And how much it's going to cost? So that's basically, those are the 3 items I thought about when I took all the data from here and put it into my condensed version right here. So I was hoping that everybody could, read through it, page through it, and if you have questions either about the major facilities master plan or the smaller version that we created, that I'd feel some questions.
So I don't think we've seen the completed major version of the master plan, correct? Because what's in our agenda packet isn't.
No, it's not this.
Right.
It's not this thick yet. But
right.
we've printed these out, and they're available to hand out if you want to look at the whole complete.
Okay, and I should tell anybody in the audience if they want a copy of this one. There are a couple copies down here on the commissioner's table. To help yourself. So haven't had a chance to look at this because we just received this tonight, and I believe that the other commissioners are in the same boat. But I do want to, if there are things you want to highlight to us about this report that you've added to it that was different from the report we've seen before, you just want to make sure we know about it, or if the commission has any questions. But let's start with you, if there's any.
There's nothing really highlighted in it. The last time I was up here on the podium with MK Think and we made our presentation, it's pretty much the same thing. The only thing that I have changed on it is I reprioritized a couple of the facilities as far as the pecking order in which we're going to do the refresh on them. And
Okay.
that's about it.
Because I know we had some questions at that commission meeting. I had some questions about the annex, not the annex, but the archives. And then I had some other questions that I had sent to our CFO about the report, and I haven't had a chance to look to see if they're answered in here, but so those may still be outstanding. But are there any other commissioners who wish to raise anything, repeat questions from the past? Commissioner McKenzie.
Hi. I'm always a little confused about the difference between the MK Think and Fergus's collective, thing that you did for us, which was really nice. And also just the concept of a plan itself. So I think one of the things I'm missing is just talking about Runner Park, for example. If we don't have the lease, for example, like I don't know myself whether the city pays for stuff or the library system pays for stuff. And when I look at the MK Think, it's clear that we need to have the building systems. It says all equipment is beyond recommended service life and should be replaced in kind. And we know that what happened over Christmas, and we had a big failure, and it's freezing cold, and there wasn't any heat. And you and your staff worked really hard to get the space heaters and save the day, which was wonderful. But so this needs to be fixed. So, but I don't know who, in terms of planning, if it's something the city has to pay for. The city has to have a plan to put aside money every year to do it. I don't roofs and all that kind of jazz. And then when I look over here in your plan, I don't see that listed. And I also am just curious. Just my other question, just to get it out there, is under events it says none. What does events none mean? That we don't need any more equipment for events, or? It's page 83. That's what I'm looking at in the Fergus plan. Yeah.
Oh, events none. Interview findings.
So the MK Think is incorporated in the Fergus plan?
Yes, MK Think is incorporated in my plan. And when it comes to events, as far as on the Fergus plan, that's referring to there's nothing that is broken at the moment when we created this plan.
Broken?
That was going down that had a red flag on it at the moment based on our preventative maintenance program and work order program.
So events none means no equipment related to events is broken? So
Yes.
Okay.
As far as a red flag.
Okay.
That might be something just to, just think up slightly different wording that makes that more clear for us. Like no issues at this time, or no deficiencies at this time.
Yeah, there was
rather
no.
than none.
It's when this was created, there was no deficiencies at the time. There was no red flags at the time that we have any impending component failure in the facility.
Okay. So the fact that our heating system is outdated, needs to be replaced, that's not incorporated under interview findings. That's in another place?
That's in another place inside the master plan.
Okay. So clearly I need to review this in more detail. But do we have that issue of who's responsible? Is that detailed out in here, whether it's...
Who's responsible is detailed in all of the leases for the various facilities. Typically, anything on the roof or the shell of the building and any other facilities the city or the county is responsible for across the board. and anything inside the facilities we're responsible for.
So the heating and air conditioning being on the roof, that means the city of Roanoke Park needs to pay for it.
Absolutely.
If it's in the lease.
Commissioner Hauser.
That's really was one of my major concerns. How much is the library system going to have to pay for these proposals, and how much are the cities going to have to pay for them? And I would like to have some document that lays that out fairly clearly for each of the branches. And it's potentially possible that some city may have a lease that's different than other cities, so they have more or less responsibility under that lease. So saying what we're going to have to deal with is I think, important to us. I have one other question, which is I got the draft MK Think plan. I went through that. With our packet, we got just the short version without the annexes to it, or whatever they call them, and then we have Fergus's. What are we approving? I want to see exactly what I'm approving and read that, because one of my issues I had was some kind of grammar and language things, just like we were talking about. None is a little unclear. Does that mean we don't have any, or there are no deficiencies? No deficiencies is a lot clearer. So how would we make suggestions about those kinds of things? Should we provide them to you, to Brett? Should we bring them up in the public meeting at next month, if that's when we're going to consider this thing again?
Well, I think before we can actually vote on it, we have to see the final version. And my question is, as I stated a little bit earlier, is when we have questions about this, like I had a question originally, like how do you determine the population of this for each library? Because I read something and I thought that didn't make sense to me on how that population was figured. And it says, we wanted to understand who's using the space in the library, the number of borrowers and patrons presented, gives an overview of how many people have cards at each library. And I don't understand that exactly, because are those the cards issued by that library, or because you can use your card at any library? So I don't really understand how that's determined, how the population that library is serving was determined. So I'd love a little more clarity on that.
I could get you, any questions with the facility master plan, you can direct them to me, email, call me, or talk to me.
Okay.
And I can get you the answers to them.
Okay, so each of the commissioners who has questions will be sending questions your way. And I do agree with Commissioner Hauser that before we actually approve a final report, we really need to see the final report. And I think the summary is lovely, and I'll enjoy looking through it and base some questions on that. But I don't know what happened to my previous questions either. And I think other commissioners sent questions in and have no idea if they were incorporated into the report or if they were answered. So I think it's just, we just feel a little bit in limbo. It looks like you guys have been working really hard, and it looks fascinating, and we applaud all the work that you've done so far. But I think that before we can actually approve it, we really need to look at it in more detail. Other questions, Commissioner May, and then Commissioner Hauser?
Mine is one little. The Windsor Library doesn't have a floor plan in this thing, so that every other library has one, but poor old Windsor doesn't get one. But it's not even my library. But I know they're all our libraries, but it's not. I'm not representing Windsor. I have a question about the scope. And I think it's obvious, but I want to be clear about it. This plan is basically how to deal with the current libraries that we have, what their problems are, and what what needs to be fixed or redone in a refresh. But we aren't taking into account facts of the future, right? For example, I think it's pretty clear to anybody who's been there that Windsor Library is very small, and that in the future we might need to have a new facility there. And in some cases, in a former master plan, we also had our look to the future. I know that 2 libraries, maybe 3, but I can only remember 3 libraries are about to be, one's in the process of being built, which is Roseland. I know that Windsor and Sebastopol both have an interest in a new facility and a larger facility. And this is not within the scope of this document, correct?
To a certain point, because all the libraries covered in the facility master plan, they talk about the size of the facilities and whether you can expand the facilities or not. So with the facility master plan, the ones that can be expanded, it's mentioned in there. The ones that cannot be expanded, it's not. You're gonna have to look at getting a different facility.
Okay. All right. I just was, because I know those are things we might need to look forward to in the future as new libraries in some cases.
So what we would be voting on is the large master plan. You've just done the highlights on this.
The highlights from the large
so
one.
we need to be prepared to vote on that.
So I'm sorry to contradict you, Fergus, but going forward, the blue copy will be our facilities master plan. The huge product is a report that MK Think generated, but that will not be our facilities master plan, but that will be on file for us to refer to. But it's the blue document that we'll ask the commission to adopt.
Thank you.
So this will still be changed, right?
Yes, it will be.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was going to ask, how do I get the big fat one? But I think I already have the big fat one because that's the MK Think plan that 2 months ago was talked about, and then I got a copy of that. Okay.
Yes.
I do want to point out that on the Sebastopol recommendation, it was our document, which is page 139, I think, what we have. It does recommend an increase of from 10,000 to 20,000 square feet. And one of my questions was, why is that? And I don't think there was that recommendation for any of the other library branches.
What was the
that had larger, populations that are served and so forth?
That answer I don't have right now, but I could get an answer for you on that.
I think I can respond to some.
I'll step in real quickly. One of the things that MK Think, when they were looking at how the prioritization was also not only the population served, but the use of the library. And one of the things they found, for example, for Sebastopol Library is that it's very, very busy. And that's why they came up with putting in a recommendation that there should be more square footage. And so that's the reason why.
Should that be in the report somewhere? The reasons for that?
Well, I think it is in the appendices and everything in their report. Yes, it is in there.
This is Vicki. I'd like to respond for a second. You were asking Commissioner Whistler about population served. So one of the issues that we look at when we look at library usage is, we have door count, right? We have circulation per capita, and we have library cards issued by that branch for the year with people claiming Sebastopol, by way of example, as their home branch location. They could get a card anywhere, but they choose to get one at Sebastopol, and they choose to claim Sebastopol as their home library. And when you look at statistics of what gets checked out and how much business is being done, by way of example, Sebastopol sifts out at the top over some of the other branches by way of example. So when you were talking about population served and how that's calculated, it really, we're pulling statistics from the state library, public library statistics. We're pulling statistics from the library automation system. We're doing door count and a number of other factors.
And that's all good, really good information, Vicki. I think that when I was reading the report, though, it just referred to library card holders, like registered at that library. So your explanation is good, and maybe something like that should be, more detailed in the report so that it's more understandable. I didn't know what library cards registered to a library meant exactly, so that would help, I think.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Grill, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Any other comments or questions? Comments from the public? Okay. Any last thing to add, Fergus?
Not too much. We added a section for the archives in here, which wasn't in there before.
Yes, thank you.
And we added that and got it pretty much on the top three as far as refreshes go. Northwest is top priority, a high priority that we're doing, and Roseland's up there also with the ongoing negotiations for Roseland.
Okay. And okay, so thank you so much. And if we have questions or comments, or will you still accept suggestions as to
Absolutely. Send
something
everything to me with my email address.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
I just want to talk about timing. If we want to bring this back in February to be approved, we would have to have questions, answers, suggestions, and everything probably by the end of next week at the latest in order to incorporate them into this to be ready for the February commission meeting. Otherwise, I don't know if that's long enough for you all to look at things and get those comments back. If it isn't, we'd probably be looking at the March commission meeting.
I have a question.
Okay, Commissioner Grill.
When MK Think, the last time they were here and spoke, and I was under the impression that as each library was in a holding pattern, getting ready to be refreshed or whatever was going to be done, there was also going to be time in there for people to come in and go, yeah, what about this or what about that? Is that a true statement or a false statement?
Anybody care to answer that? Brett? Ken?
That's a true statement. I think MK Think went through the process with the commission and tried to even contact everyone by phone that wanted to be talked to by phone, so that that process was in the way they came up with the report. So yes, that's a true statement, and it was completed as much could be done at the time.
Maybe I wasn't clear, Ken. What I was just saying was that I left with the impression that, let's just say Petaluma was out 3 years, and in that interim period, people have MK's input and they're reading it and they're getting more prescient with it, and they go, yeah, what about blah, blah? I was under the impression that those changes were going to be made. That was what I was asking. Is that true or false? Or once it's completed, is it a done deal? Can't be changed.
So, Paul, are you saying that you don't think that we can change it at this point, or that other...
No, I'm not being clear. Okay, let me try one more time. MKA has their finished model, and they have their input that they got from all of us. I was also under the impression that in each library, where it was on the holding pattern to be refurbished, that input could come later, at a later date. That is my question. Can it let's say Petaluma was 3 years out, and we've already appropriated all this, but Tim comes in and says, you know what? We decided we wanted to do this at our library. So where does that fit into that model?
Commissioner May, did you have a comment?
I just talked with Brett about this afternoon, and that basically there will be a process established. Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, but there will be each of the refreshes will go through a design stage, and each of those groups in the library, like the lab and the staff, etc., will have a chance to have input into the design stage. Is that correct? So that will be a piece of the actual process.
Yeah, I would agree, and also it's the commission's ultimate decision about which buildings do get renovated and in what order. So I think there's room for flexibility within the master plan. If funding were to materialize for one location and not so for others, I would assume that we'd consider moving that library up in the queue. So yeah, I do see an opportunity for there to be some shuffling going forward, and I've said that with people who've asked me that question.
Does that answer your question,
Yes.
Paul? Okay. Okay, Commissioner May?
Yeah, I have one more request, and I don't want to put a lot on the YouTube, but I think I'm not sure that I would have even any comments to make about this. But if I were to send you an email or something with a proposal, and if that proposal were not to appear in the final master plan, I would appreciate some sort of comment that said, essentially, thank you, but we decided not to include this because, so that I knew that I wasn't sending ideas out into the vapor. Okay?
Okay. Any comments from the members of the public on this item? Okay.
I do want to make sure the expectations are set as to when this will be coming back to you all. Like I said, the timing for the February meeting would mean that everyone would need to get their comments and everything to Fergus, and he'd have to take them into consideration in the next 2 weeks.
I thought you said by the end of next week.
Yes.
So is the date, do you have a date? Is that like January 20th or 27th?
May I comment on this issue? Because I don't think doing it for February is going to work, because I don't want to have this appear when I get here a month from now and I'm supposed to know what's in there.
That's right.
I want to have that a couple of weeks ahead of time, because I've spent a lot of time reading all this stuff, trying to understand it. It's very complex. So I think we need to look at March, personally, for actually bringing this back. Now, I have a question. Is there a problem with putting it off that long? Is this a time issue or anything on this? Okay.
No, I mean, I think
to have March is
I think March is fine because the staff are already using it as a tool to help plan our work. So I don't think there's urgency with which month it's adopted.
Okay. So does anybody object? Is that okay to have that on the March agenda instead of the February? Okay.
Okay, then we could set the deadline for the questions and comments maybe then for January 31st. How does that sound?
Sounds good. Thanks,
Okay.
Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, David Dodd.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question for whoever could answer it. Under the metrics portion of each page on each branch, there's a item called patrons per borrower.
Called?
Patrons per borrower. I'm just wondering what that might mean.
Yeah, and I knew what that meant at one time, and I've since forgotten. Fergus, can you remember what that stat means? Patrons per borrower?
Under metrics of the descriptions for each of the branches.
Actually, I think I may remember. I think it's a fraction, so they'll have a 0.9 or a 0.8 or something like that.
This is, for instance, in Healdsburg, there are 12.2 patrons per borrower.
That seems like
Well, it seems a little odd. Maybe someone can clarify. And the other question I have is, where are the circulation statistics in here, the usage for each branch?
That would be a good thing to have in there.
Yeah, I would think that would be in the metrics somewhere, probably, because we're talking about that as a prime metric for determining, for instance, needed square footage or use. So,
right. So,
and also perhaps things about collection size. I mean, I'm sort of biased, but maybe.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. So it just seems like maybe these metrics need to be like looked at a little bit as part of that comment process that Ken was referring to.
Did you make a note of that, Fergus? Yeah, thank you.
Patrons, the definition of patron is the
Hi.
Hi, I'm Diana Spalding. I'm the teen librarian at the Petaluma Library, which I notice has 0 square feet. I'm pretty sure we have good-sized teen collections, new teen furniture, and it's at least as evident as the children's section of the library. And I noticed that in a couple other branches as well. So I think maybe we can look a little more closely at the square footage that's used for each of the, at least the teen areas, if we could include that.
Can you tell me what page you're looking at? Or?
Yeah, I'm looking at page 77 in the 1, 2, 3
yeah, I see that
document.
So it looks like a little better editing.
I think maybe it was established after the. No, it's.
Oh, we've had a teen section for at least 2 years.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so let's move on to item 12.2, budget adjustments related to additional positions.
Hi. We put together this budget adjustment thinking that we should get your approval and the money as we start to hire these people for the Monday through, or for the April through June open Mondays. As you can see, it came up to approximately $750,000. It's the salaries, wages, and benefits that we're talking about here. And since this is a discussion item, it's changed a little bit, but, we plan on opening 10 to 9 on Mondays and an additional hour on Wednesday evenings. These additional positions will be needed to provide the services for these open items, or open hours. Future, as we think about this going forward, there'll be other adjustments that need to be made for things like collection, supplies, new trucks, new vehicles, things like that. This was for the public service side of the people side of things, for more staff. The other thing that will need to be decided in the future is whether or not, for April through June, what we would be doing is taking the money out of fund balance to fund these items, because we won't see any of the revenue from the sales tax measure until July. And the commission will need to decide at some point in time whether that money gets repaid to fund balance by the sales tax revenue, or we use the fund balance as kind of saying a thank you to the patrons and citizens of Sonoma County. It's something that will need to be, like I said, looked at in the future as we move forward.
I see 2 hands. I see Commissioner Garcia and then Commissioner May and then Commissioner McKenzie. Oh.
Excuse me. Thank you. I sat in the wrong place. So what I'm hearing is there's a couple of issues that we're going to have to vote on, and that is about repaying the money that's going to be borrowed if we approve to do that.
Correct.
And also, I have an issue is it set in concrete that the library has been decided to be open from 10 until 9 on Mondays, and with an additional hour on Wednesdays? And is there any room for discussion on that? That's one thing. And the other thing is it mentions the positions here on page 155. And I understand a lot of hard work has gone into this, and we don't have an HR person right now. And I understand that, and I need to say I'm sorry about that. But it is my understanding that most of these positions close this Friday.
Correct.
And my concern is that Job Links hasn't heard about this, veterans associations haven't heard about these positions, can't find it in the Press Democrat, have not heard anything from the Latino service providers under jobs. Has this been advertised to the county, the JC, and Sonoma State? And some of those answers are no. And realizing that these positions have come out during an interesting time, which we call the holidays, where everything's shut down, I would really like to see us cast a wide net and close the positions at least 1 week later. And can we do that?
Well, right now what we've done is we've contracted with Regional Government Services and to provide us an HR manager for this recruiting process that will be running it from the get-go. Keo and I have spoke to them and Vicki over the past week, and they're on board and they'll be taking care of this. One of the reasons why we wanted to post them, while we realized it wasn't ideal over the holiday period, and we usually only keep them open 2 weeks, but we kept them open 3 weeks for that reason, was that as we worked backwards from April 1st, we realized that we had to get them posted, or we wouldn't be able to reach the April 1st or April 3rd deadline. So we've posted it to many of the, all of our usual places. Can't name them off to you right now. Pardon?
What are those usual places? The library associations?
Right. I don't know them.
Okay. My whole thing is we're responsible for this money and for outreach. We are the commission. We are committed to reaching out and diversifying the employee workforce. Can we document that we have done that within our own community? We are at a crossroads right now to be able to hire and diversify our workforce. To not completely reflect, but try to reflect the population that exists here and the needs that are here in the county of Sonoma. And we also have a commitment to veterans and to job links, county job links, all of those things. Have we reached out to veterans groups as well as underserved groups, the Roseland community, to job links, to county? Have we cast a wide enough net? And
I think we have cast a wide enough net, and like I said...
Well, let me finish Thank you. And I do appreciate everything you're doing. I do know that you're working long hours and all of those things. Don't misunderstand me. But we have an opportunity to really increase the workforce. And let's do it in a way that's inclusive. And could we even adjust a week, given the holidays, and that some of the organizations may have shut down or cut back on their hours? Can we do that?
I'm going to jump in here, Ken. We'll consider it. We'll consider that. I'll continue to work with library management on the recruitment. First, we'll see what types of applications we do get on the by closing. And if management feels that either the quality or the quantity isn't sufficient, then absolutely we'll extend the postings. But first, I do want to see what comes in, and perhaps it's a ton of applications and they're all spectacular.
Would that be inclusive applications, or are they applications for people who know the system, who have been volunteering? We must make a commitment as an organization. This is public money. This is public money to do outreach, to make sure. It doesn't matter that we have 30 applications right now. What matters is how diverse are those applications. And to take it under consideration, ladies and gentlemen, we are responsible for this public money.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner May.
I feel really pleased that this has moved to a discussion item rather than a motion to approve for any number of reasons. But the first is, I think we really definitely, before we vote on this, we need to decide whether we're using the money from the fund balance on a one-time basis or whether it's being returned. And I don't know whether that's a discussion we can have tonight, or I think probably in terms of timeline, we absolutely need to decide at the next meeting so you have the money to pay for the people you hire. But I think that that's a crucial decision. And related to that decision are basically two elements. One of them is a reminder of what is in the fund balance and what's available to spend from the fund balance on a one-time basis. And secondly, a piece of that, from my perspective, is the OPEB requirements and the fact that if we're going to be able to fund OPEB, it's from the fund balance, and I want to balance that in to the use of this. The second question that would stop me from voting on this at this point would be, I'm not sure essentially whether this sheet that we've been given is, we've got 3 full-time librarians, I'll just stick there, 3 full-time librarians and 1 part-time librarian. Is that the total number of FTEs that we're going to be hiring in the librarian staff? Or are there people who are currently half-time employees who may go to full-time? And so I would like to have this presented to me when I'm ready to vote in terms of FTE rather than the positions, so that I know that I'm voting. Am I voting for 3.5 FTEs for the librarians, or am I voting for how many?
3 point. Yeah, that's
so that in terms of this first phase, you're essentially just expecting to increase it by 3.5 FTEs.
Can you capture that, Keo, to, what Tim's asking for, and we'll be sure that at the next agenda item we add that information?
And so before, and I really realize the urgency to be able to vote on this at the next meeting for the, I understand that. But in order for me to be able to vote for it, I need to have that issue of the fund balance resolved. And I don't know whether we can discuss it tonight and come up with a direction for you about how we do this, or if it's going to require an motion from the library. But I think that that's a real issue that we have to address.
Okay. Real quickly, I'll start out by saying we'll be tracking these expenses so we can easily identify them, first off. Secondly, we can have that discussion tonight if you'd like. It's not up to me, but about where the money comes from or gets repaid to or whatever. Or it could be, we've talked about it for at our last Finance Committee meeting. It could be something that the Finance Committee talks about and brings a recommendation to the full commission. It's up to you on that.
Commissioner McKenzie, you had a comment?
Yeah, I thought I would clarify a little bit to everybody what happened. Normally, a budget adjustment, not that we've made a lot of them, but a budget adjustment or, an item like this would come through the Finance Committee and then with a recommendation to the full commission. And what happened is at our December Finance Committee meeting, there were some requests for a lot more detail. We didn't actually have anything. We didn't even have this written out. And we wanted to discuss it further, and it was going to be on our January Finance Committee meeting and then come to the commission. And then all of a sudden, several of us saw that it had jumped straight to the commission agenda. So Ken and I had a very good conversation about this. And as he explained, I think staff became uncomfortable that they were going through a hiring process without having an authorization from the full commission to spend the money. So I can understand it from that standpoint, but certainly the Finance Committee never really got into the nitty-gritty, the detail, and we did not have the fund balance discussion. So I think there's a lot of potential work that could come through the committee, but doesn't have to come through the committee. And in terms of the detail of this, I agree. I just kind of like to know where these positions are going to be also, like which branches and stuff. I mean, there's not a lot of detail here. And the other question, kind of going along with what Commissioner Garcia was talking about, is suddenly, besides these positions, there's suddenly the commitment to be open on Mondays till 9 o'clock, which kind of like, well, where did that come from? I mean, we haven't discussed that. And I agree, just kind of the big picture of this. I wrote this statement out just to try to clarify my thoughts. We as a commission put the tax initiative before the voters and ask for their support. We represent our cities and the county, and we have the authority and the responsibility to be part of the decision-making process as these funds are expended, including hearing from our communities about what hours the particular branches should be open. This is a golden opportunity that won't come again, to get our labs involved, to hear from the branch managers and staff, and to collectively collaborate and make sure we're implementing the best plan. So I'm not as concerned about the staff kind of specifications, but I'm very concerned that we have not talked about hours as a commission and been part of that process. And at our last lab meeting in Rohnert Park, we talked about this would be a great opportunity, when the labs were not involved when the closures happened. And this was kind of a big problem. And now we have an opportunity to go the other direction. And we're not listening because we haven't asked, the labs what they think. The different branches may have different issues. Maybe it's a way better idea for Rohnert Park to be open, multiple nights and not open on Sunday. I don't know, but we haven't had this conversation. So
Can I jump in for a sec? I agree with you. Right now, just to keep things in perspective, what staff was trying to do is open Mondays. I think it was made very clear since 2011 that the public wants Mondays back. We certainly promised that through the tax initiative, and now staff's trying to fulfill on that promise. At any point, you can tell us to stop. But that's really what we're doing now, is we're trying to get our libraries open Monday. Beyond that, that is an additional conversation. Helene and I have talked about this. I've asked Angelina to start working with the labs to see if they're interested in convening some community conversations around hours, because I agree it might be better for Sebastopol to be open on Thursday night and another library to be open on Friday night. So we do have to figure that out going forward, but really right now we're trying to open Mondays. And if you all want us to shave that extra hour on Monday and Wednesday back off, we can do that. But at any point you can tell us to stop. But as of now, management feels like it's doing a good thing and trying to get these libraries open. Some of you even said that you would have preferred it to happen in January. So, we have gotten input from the commission, but yeah, tell us now if we should forego opening Mondays this fiscal year.
Well, we had the discussion about opening Mondays. We had the presentation from Keough, and we talked about it, but I don't know where the Monday till 9 came from. Why Monday night? I mean, that's kind of like a question mark. And that's just what led me to this thing of like, we really need to be talking about this. I know it's very difficult to hire when you're interviewing people and you're telling them what hours are going to be work. I know that's hard. So it has to be with the proviso that, we haven't, specified our open hours. But the Monday night till 9, is just still a particular issue with me. I don't know where that came from or why we're going to do it.
I just have a quick question. Brett, how quickly do you think Angelina can accomplish her mission? Because it seems to me that the labs would need to convene a public forum actually and get some input from their communities. So what do you
I know she and I sat down and just spoke about that last week, and I made sure that she had all the content information for the labs, and I asked her to CC the commissioners as well with all this. So my understanding is she's getting started immediately with this. Because again, as we add even more hours in the next fiscal year, we need to know what those will be per location. Another agenda item, again, we're trying to cover a lot of bases very quickly, staff are. An agenda item for next month is having the commission adopt a set of service hours from April through June of this year. So again, we're trying to get as many things before you as possible and get this done.
So, okay, well, we should talk about that more. Adopt the service hours,
It would
like
be
the total,
Mondays.
or the
No, it
which
would be
day?
adding the Mondays just so that there's a commission vote on
Okay.
going up to what's going to be the new total, Keo? 66. Yeah, to adopt a 66-hour service schedule for the rest of this fiscal year.
So not to keep talking about the same thing, but so each of the labs has a different meeting schedule. Is she going to get in touch with them via email, perhaps, to try to...
That's my understanding what she was going to do initially, yes.
Okay. Commissioner May.
Just a comment and a question. The comment is I'm perfectly happy if the Finance Committee comes to me at the next meeting with a recommendation regarding the spending of the fund balance. And I can have a right then to agree or disagree, but basically that process seems to work for me. But my second question is, I'm gathering that this is the first step and that we're going to be needing to increase our staff as we implement more and more hours. So this is just basically to get us open at least on Mondays in April so that we can satisfy our promise. The other question I had has completely slipped my mind. And so I will...
Okay, well, we'll move on to somebody else.
I'll let it come back if it does.
Sure. I have a question on the list of positions. I understand the librarians and the associates. The facility, I'd like more information on the two facilities positions and what they're going to do and how much they're going to cost. And I did ask about what the IT support was, so I have the answer to that question. But the next time I vote, I'd like to know what the facilities people are going to do.
So the librarian, here it is.
And will you have a breakdown of the cost for these positions? Because the $750,000, it just would be nice to see where it's covered.
Sure. Yep, I can do
Thanks,
that.
Ken. Thanks. And Keo, did you have something to add? No. About these positions? Okay. So, I'm sorry. Commissioner Hauser?
Is it possible for a branch to say, yes, we want Monday until 6 o'clock, but we'd rather have Thursday until 9 or something like that? Is that possible at this stage in the hiring process to make that decision?
Can I weigh in on this?
I don't know. When you say branch, do you mean the employees? Do you mean the friends? Do you mean...
No, I think that...
a community
the community
decision.
Okay.
Somehow, whatever the community is, there's a decision they'd rather have Thursday instead of Monday evenings. Is that possible to make that happen?
I think anything's possible. I'm not sure how it would work to get it there, but yes.
But you're saying the table is open Mondays till 6.
What? Off the table?
In other words, that's not something that the branches can have an input to say.
Okay,
and say,
got it.
We'd like to be open Sunday and not open
So the
Monday.
question to the branches or the service areas would be, in addition to adding Monday back,
Monday till 6.
Monday till 6, right? What other hours do you want in your community? Up to how many hours? I don't remember where we are right now. But that's okay. We can figure that. We can work on that. And I'm sure Angelina's going to be taking that into consideration when she talks to them. Are there, Commissioner Grill, do you have any comments on this item 12.2?
I do not.
Okay. Commissioner McKenzie, you have another comment?
I would just like to try to get an answer to why Monday till 9. Where did that come from? Instead of opening on Monday.
Well, could I just suggest that we save that for the discussion that we're going to have on the hours, and we
They're doing
move
the
forward.
hiring now.
We're not doing it here. We're not voting on this.
No, the hiring is happening.
Well, but people's schedules are something that they learn after they're hired. So I don't know that they have to know that during the interview process. They just have to know that the library plans to have evening hours at some point in there.
Yeah,
Right?
I can imagine we're going to be interviewing before the next commission meeting, so I think if we did change horses between now and April, we could. As far as whether we stay open till 6 on Mondays or 9, I mean, Keo could certainly, she's going to have very firm rationalization as to how she settled on that through talking to other staff and her own judgment. So we can either do that now, or as Helena said, we could do it when we talk about the hours of service next month.
Well, I'm happy to hear if Keo wants to comment on her judgment on that, but I do want to move on from this discussion at this point after that. I'm sorry, Tim, what did Tim say?
I was telling her, don't forget public comment.
Oh, and then Keo, well, let's hear from Keo, and then we can have public comment.
Just very quickly, Keo, if you could share how you came to the 9 p.m. on Mondays.
Pardon me, again?
So if you could quickly share how you came to staying open on 9 p.m.s on Mondays.
Well, I think that our thought was when we give the gift of additional hours to the public, and Monday was closed. So it makes sense to us to give a full hours on Monday. And we have the one evening and the Monday opening to match Wednesday to give the 4 hours. That is.
And you got you got an agreement from all the branch managers that Monday until 9 work for them? Did you discuss it with them and ask their opinion?
That was not done before the decision was made. No.
Okay. I have another comment. Oh, Reese has a comment.
Commissioner Foxton?
It just seems to me that opening it the full time on Monday and complementing it with another night is the most consistent way to do it and the most reasonable. Otherwise, you get jerking around the hours. And as she said, you're giving them a gift of Monday, so give them the whole gift because eventually they're going to get it anyway. So that's my comment.
Others?
I have an answer to Commissioner May's question.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
My FTE question?
I have, thank you very much. I have you asked for how many FTE?
Right.
The library does not hire anyone less than 20 hours, which is half, 0.5 FTE. So when it says part-time, that is 0.5 FTE.
But I also noticed that... Go ahead.
Yes. So the positions to be posted, I added them up. It's 23.5 FTE up there. And then the bottom portion, additional hours to existing staff, these are the hours that the branch managers identified to add to their existing staff. So if the existing staff was working 20 hours, and if they needed 5 more hours to make this happen, or maybe making the half-time position to a full-time position, and then that would be the 20 hours added. These are not new persons. These hours are added to existing people.
But they're coming out of the $750,000.
That is correct.
So basically, if I take the 42 hours of librarian at the bottom, I get 4.5 FTE are being hired for the librarians.
You mean the additional hours to existing staff?
So in other words, we're increasing by 4. 7. As a matter of fact.
I came to, I add them all up, and that was 107.5, and so it comes to about 2.69 FTE for the whole bottom
that whole
section.
package.
And then I put it together at about 26 FTE, or a little bit more.
Okay.
This particular sheet of paper.
Right.
Now, Vicky just brought a wonderful little tip here. The Monday evening, and would allow us to give one more opportunity to give the family an evening event. So does it make sense? That we only have one evening right now on Wednesday evenings to do family pajama story time, or the computer class, or a musical event. Adding the evening on Monday will give us one more opportunity for the library events, as well as for the public to use the library for their community meetings. So that is a benefit that we hear from the public, that there's only one evening that we could have a meeting, and of course everybody wants a Wednesday night, and we can only accommodate one organization. So that's a good point.
Commissioner Grill, did you have a comment?
No, I did not.
Okay.
It's all very interesting, though.
Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, and my comment isn't for you except to thank you all for all of your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my comment goes to, we heard Director Lear say that the management team will take under consideration that we would postpone the close date of some of these positions, and as well as when I have recommended to him that we have bilingual staff in every library. So I'm going to ask the commissioners, what do you support? Do you support the inclusion of other groups besides those who just watched the positions be open for 2 weeks during the holidays? Or is there support to open these positions up and to do outreach to underserved and other groups in the county?
Commissioner May, you have a comment?
I would have 2 parts to that. One of them is, do you have any ballpark idea of how many more positions are going to be requested to flesh out the rest of the program? And if that's true, and we have a second and third go-round in the hiring, I would strongly encourage that what you suggest happens. I would also support the idea that I believe Brett has said, that we would like to put into an evaluation of the applications a look at the diversity in the applications. And if there does not seem to be a diverse population that are applying for these jobs, that we reopen it and extend it. Those are what I think.
Well, my comment on this is I think this has come up before as far as I think the Commission has expressed some concern in the past about how widely positions are recruited. So I don't know the details, and I don't like to necessarily get down in the weeds, but I think we have made recommendations to HR about adding different resources to post jobs, and it would be great to know if those are followed through, just such as the ones that Commissioner Garcia presents tonight. So I don't know what is required in this, if it means that we should really sit down and come up with an agreeable list for recruitments, or how this can work, because it does seem to when we do make these kind of suggestions, it does, nothing really happens with it. So I think our concern, I think Commissioner Garcia has a valid concern, and that a serious look at how we do recruitments needs to be made.
It is to direct the director to open up the positions and make sure the job links, the Veterans Administration and veterans job postings, as well as underserved communities, are contacted within this week and close the positions next week. Not consideration, but to direct. And if I don't have support for that, then that's fine too. But I believe that we have been talking about this for a long time. We are at a crossroads. We have lots of positions open, and we shouldn't just wait and see what we've got with the applications now, because those applications are to a very small audience, and that means that there has not been a wide net cast. And as I will say to you, as I have said before, there are qualified individuals who may be from disabled, enabled communities, returning veterans, Latinos, African Americans, Native Americans, but we have to let them know that the jobs exist.
Any other comments from the commission? Director Leary, you have a comment?
It's just a comment and an opinion and a concern, and that's by me saying that I will consider it. That was an honest statement. I think you also have to understand that you do have managers that do understand how to hire people, and we all are of high integrity, and we do want a diverse workforce, so we have those standards ourselves. I would have a concern if the commission does start voting and giving direction on HR processes and procedures such as closing dates. That seems well within the job descriptions of management. So those are my comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner Hauser?
I've heard the discussion about a 66-hour week, and I think what that means is Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. for each of the branches, Saturday, 10 to 6, I think it is, and then Sunday for 6 hours, 10 to 6 or whatever it is, or 12 to 6. So you get 66. What the proposal that the staff has come up with is 11 hours on Monday being added, 1 hour on Wednesday. That's 12 hours. So there would be approximately 6 hours on Sunday plus 3 hours on Tuesday and Thursday, I think is what they consider.
Expansion of Saturday.
Pardon?
Expansion of Saturday hours.
Is Saturday expanded to get to 66?
Yes.
Okay, but we got maybe 12 now, maybe 12 more. So in this advertisement for jobs, we're hiring half of the people we're going to need for this potential 66 hour. And I want to say that I have a concern that we might run out of money before we get to the full 66 hours. And I have that in my mind too, because we don't know exactly what we're doing in this whole thing, and there's a lot of other little expenses that are going to come from there. And I have this worry in the back of my mind, just like the question of repaying $750,000. Well, that's going to take time to do it over 3 years or something. I don't know, and so that reduces the tax take and other things like that. So I have concerns, and I fully understand this concept about having a broad advertisement, and I think it's appropriate for us to direct the types of human resource advertising that should be done to make sure that the veterans groups or whoever are included in that. That's just good public policy to make people think we're doing the right thing. Whether it makes a difference or not, we're trying. Having said that, I'm not sure what we're going to do. That's why I asked the question, is it possible for one of the branches, whatever that community may be, to decide they want to not be open Monday night? They'd rather have those 3 hours directed in some other way. And I think the answer was until we get closer to April, we probably have that flexibility. Certainly at the next meeting, we would have that flexibility. I don't know if that's enough time for the communities to get together and make a decision, though.
Well, thank you for those comments, Commissioner Hauser. Maybe we should ask the executive team to look at that question and come back to us with an answer, because if it's not feasible, it doesn't make sense to put it out to the communities that it is a possibility. So that seems like that might be a step for the library to tell us if they think it's feasible or not. I know in the past we believed that it was feasible. We've had plans looked at over the last few years as to what hours communities might want and how that would work. But now that we actually have the money within our site, do we still think that? So I don't know. I don't know, Brett, if you want to ask your staff to really give that some thought, how that could work. Because truly, I think it would be bad form for us to ask the labs to ask their communities and then say, oops, sorry, it's not going to work.
Is the question whether we want to reconsider whether we want to go to a 12-hour Monday and to investigate perhaps a shorter Monday and then adding hours elsewhere in the week between now and July 1st?
Well, Commissioner Hauser can correct me, but I believe the question is, are we really asking for the communities to tell us what hours they want for their libraries? And whether that means no Mondays or any scheme of hour up to, so that everybody has the same hours, but to different days. So if we have to box it in at a less of a, sorry, what time is it anyway? If we have to say, okay, but you have to have hours on Monday, no matter what, but you can figure out what hours you want every day. But you know what does that make sense, Brent? So are we going to go to the labs and let them really have an honest discussion about what hours work best for their branch?
As coming into this meeting tonight, certainly library management's perception was that we would, in April, open an 11-hour day on Mondays, add an hour on Wednesdays, and then beyond that, start talking to the labs about, there'd be some parameters, and we have done cost calculations on adding hours. It's not that it's unknown. Ken can send out again the budget that he put together while we were campaigning for Measure Y that shows exactly how much money will need to go into staffing going forward. But as of now, if I were to direct Angelina, it would be, we will open 11 hours on Monday, add an hour on Wednesday, and then, make that clear to the labs. And then beyond that, and again, I've forgotten the total number of weekly hours that management feels that we can fund through Measure Y, but it would be to expand out to that total. What would you like to see in your local community?
Right, and I agree. I personally, I think Mondays are great, and to 9 o'clock wasn't something I thought was a bad thing. I know that there have been some comments from people in the staff at different places about, they're a little leery of the 9 o'clock hour. Well, what's going to happen? Nobody shows up. But I believe the library does have a plan for programs to draw people in the evening. But aside from that, but there have been some questions about why Mondays. So it sounds like we should have that discussion one more time and really try to get it right, because I know that the communities do have different opinions.
I suggest that we proceed with the plan as is, that we open Monday till 9 and Wednesday till 9, with the idea that we will have the labs have an opportunity to basically discuss or come up with the ideas that they would like, which indicates a change in schedule. So when we are at that stage where we're making a change in schedule, if a library does not want to be open until 9 on Monday, but they would prefer to be open till 8 on Saturday or something like that, the whole schedule is going to change. And if we open the door of allowing branches to have their hours as they wish, we're going to have a really interesting collection of when libraries are open instead of uniform, which is neither here or there. But basically, essentially what we're saying is everything's going to change. So we're talking now about from April to June or July. Let's go ahead, because of the time and where we're going. My proposal or my perspective is let's open up as staff has recommended, and then as we get to the point where we change, perhaps that local branch can make that input at that point.
I'd second that.
It's not a motion tonight, but it's a discussion. But we could put this on February for a vote by the commission, and I would like to do that and end this discussion now.
Well,
tonight.
We have one more comment.
I'm sorry, Reese.
Might I
Commissioner
suggest
Foxen.
in this process that we go ahead and give them directions to move forward with Mondays and Wednesdays? Because otherwise they're going to be sitting for a month without really being able to
Well,
take some of the
we have nothing
necessary
to vote
steps.
on, so I think they were moving forward with that, and I think that we're not voting to stop that. Will that work for you, Brett? There's nothing on the table to do. All right, so moving on, unless there are comments from the public about this. I see a public comment, perhaps? No. Okay, you moved. All right, so there's no comment from the public on item 12.2, and we'll move on to 12.3, special presentation. Yes. Run item 12.3, special presentation, staffing study results.
Okay.
It's intriguing.
Thank you all for your patience.
We rehearsed everything but where to stand.
So hello again.
Hello.
So tonight, Matthew Rose and I represent the Staffing Study Task Force in presenting this report to you. The task force consisted of Patrick Preston and myself and Jamie Anderson, who stepped in December to take Patrick's place while he was preparing for his retirement. And Matthew Rose, branch manager of the Sebastopol Library, and Tracy Gray, manager of the Central Library. So this management and unions joint task force worked collaboratively to develop this study. It was a healthy and useful exercise. This presentation and report conclude the side letter commitment, and implementation of the study's finding will be subject to budget constraints and commission approval.
I just want to do a quick walkthrough of what you've got in your paper. So looking at bullet number 1 is talking about the research methods we used. We concluded that most libraries use the population to determine staffing levels per FTE, and they've got 3 bullet points with examples of what that would be. The second item is discuss service expectations. We focused on 3 public service classifications for most of what we talked about: the branch managers, the librarians, and the specialists. And there's examples of what their expectations are listed there, as well as in the addendum, or in the additional pages, there's more service expectations outlined. as you can see, the public service staff does a lot more than just sit at a desk or check out and check in books.
Really?
The third section of the staffing study is identifying work that cannot be accomplished due to inadequate staffing. The most of the data that was included in this was replies to a staffing survey. We gathered a lot of data that could be used to analyze future workflow improvements or could indicate that we're short-staffed. The data is a great trove of information for our management to look at to determine. The fourth section of the staffing study was to create criteria to determine staffing levels. We strived very hard to make sure that we had a balance between workload, hours open, the service population, the building size, and other criteria to make sure that each section of the public services is staffed appropriately. Each of those variables can change. I hope building size does in Sebastopol. Circulation is one of those that changes when you change hours, and when changing hours changes hours. So every variation there would change the staffing. When we apply the criteria outlined in that section, the chart of each branch shows what it would look like compared with our current staffing. The chart also includes our square footage of the building, the population, the current check-ins per year, as well as the projected check-ins for 66 hours of operation.
Okay, and we brainstormed for an action plan that include developing plans for history and genealogy, adult literacy, Roseland Library, and rural stations that are not included in this study. Continue to look at staffing models both in libraries and other industries per the strategic plan objective 5B2. So I wanted to review what is a 5B2 of the strategic plan, unless you have memorized it. So strategic plan 5B2 says, look to other organizations and professions and review industry standards when establishing best practices for inventory control, acquisitions, and other significant library operations. We will continue to update the service area boundaries and the populations. As you know, this information is fluid, and we need to be up to date. And we will continue to assess public service staffing needs and strive toward optimal staffing levels to meet the goals of the strategic plan. So with that, we respectfully submit this report to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This looks like a very thorough report. And you started on it when? I'm sorry, you said and I missed.
November.
Okay, well, thank you. Any comments or questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Hauser?
Yeah, it looks like a...
Oh, sorry, I'll get, go ahead, Commissioner Grill.
I was just going to say, I'm pretty impressive also. Just real quick thumbnail, looks like a lot of work went into it.
Thank you. Commissioner Hauser?
Would this report change if, for some reason, we could not get to 66 hours per week per branch? Say we only got to 60 hours or something like that. How would that affect what you have here?
The criteria set up so that it is based on 66 hours. The two classifications in this staffing study that would be affected would be the librarian staff as well as the specialist staff at our smaller branches. In order to balance the workload or the recommendation between building size, hours open, and activity, sometimes the hours open has more staff than the check-in criteria and the workload criteria. So if you reduce the hours for those branches, the staffing would go down.
So it would have to be, it's revisable, you have your criteria, you can do it without inventing everything over again, but it would change things.
Correct, it's scalable.
Yeah, and then we will also add that, that the numbers are important, but there is always a professional judgment call involved in this kind of a study.
Commissioner McKenzie?
I think this is such an important study, and I've asked about staffing, for years in the library, so I'm so glad you did this. This is really important. I had just a couple of questions. One, you got 56 responses when you sent out the Survey Monkey. What kind of a percentage response was that, roughly? And I don't who got it.
The survey was sent to librarians, the circulation crew, the circulation supervisors, specialists, as well as branch managers. Did we send to aides?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So, what is that? For everyone, all the public services except for 4 FTE, roughly.
So 56 people answered out of how many, roughly?
88.
80?
88.
88. Oh, so that was that's a really good response rate. And then I noticed that
I apologize. I gave you 88 as the total FTE, not the total number of people. I'm not sure the total number of people.
Oh, that's right. We'll get back to you.
Okay. And
More
then,
than 88.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me obviously people who are going to feel stressed out and they have too much to do, they're the ones that are going to be answering this question, it seems like to me. So, and then I was curious because you have the national average FTE of staff, and you have the national FTE of libraries, and you only have the California average of librarians, but not the California average of staff. National average of FTE for all staff per 25,000. I just wondered what that was in California, because it's just the national.
That was national.
Yeah. So anyway, when you respond, I'm just kind of curious about that. But anyway, I thought this was a really important report. I really appreciated all the responses. Some of the stuff has been my observation, too, about all the things people don't have time to do. And so anyway, important work, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner May.
Commissioner May.
Yeah.
I have a question essentially for Ken, which is interesting related to this. Because so far as I see, if we are going to be working towards the optimum staffing, a piece of how we're going to do that is measure Y. But I'm wondering whether you're getting I know that you're kind of beginning the budget process for the next year. And I'm wondering if as you do that, whether we will have an increase in our non-Y budget, our Y-list budget, and if one of the places that can be looked at for making this happen can be in our Y-list budget. Are you understanding what I'm saying?
The Y-list.
In other words, let's imagine Y didn't pass.
Property tax.
We have the property tax, and is the property tax projected to increase?
Yes, it's projected to increase by 3%.
3%. Right. Okay. All right. So basically, some of how that could be used would be to increase staff. We don't only need to think of measure Y as a way to increase staff. We also will have an increasing budget from property tax.
Yes, that's
So
true.
All right.
We probably wouldn't increase ours to 66, which is property tax.
Well, I don't know. I'm just thinking that we don't only have to think about measure Y as the way that we're going to have an increase in budget. We may have a 3% increase in budget from property tax.
Commissioner Hauser.
But aren't our other costs increasing? We have labor increases for our current staff, and other things like that. So, 3% doesn't sound like a big increase that we're going to have a lot of money left over from, to me. But
correct. Yes, there's benefits, CalPERS, the contract negotiations that we just went through has increases. Yes, you're correct.
So this is moved to discussion item. I'm just wondering if so this has been management and staff have come together with this. So what would be done with this report if we?
We've been asked to adopt.
Yes, but then what will be done with it?
Right, I know. But that's
Will the library then adopt the staffing levels?
If I could jump in.
Please.
So I too agree that this is great work. It was, it was done somewhat quickly in order to meet the deadline. I think what needs to be done is further conversations around this. Ultimately we need to have staffing standards. This document as of now is not that. But I think this is a great starting point for starting to develop standards. So I just feel there's more work to be done, more communication with the union, more work on management's behalf, but to take what's here and try to come out the other end with some actual standards that do inform the number of personnel that we have per location.
Commissioner May?
I have one other quick question about page 165. We've got the librarian, branch manager, library positions. Is it safe to assume the librarian position can be treated roughly the same as a library associate also, so that librarian and librarian associate fall in that category?
The decision to include those in one category was to exercise the professional judgment, as Kia was mentioning earlier.
But is library associate listed there in that page? It's not. Should it be? Page 165 in the packet.
Second to the last page of your report.
Yeah.
It should be a slash, correct?
It should say, it should include library associate. Okay.
So which one?
But not all of those tasks would be performed by a library associate.
Not all of them. Okay.
But the main duties, particularly the reference services and patron interaction,
okay,
would be.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. All right. We can vote on it even though we moved it to discussion?
No, it's a discussion item. It'll need to be moved to.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I want to vote on it. I think, as Brett was saying, this is part of the discussion about how we're going to staff the library, and that's a decision. We've made a commitment through the end of June, but we have to decide what's going to happen come July, what we're going to do. And we've had a lot of discussion about that. So I think this is something we just need to accept and maybe come back to as we develop our ideas about what we think needs to happen next year. I think we need to start working on what we're going to do next year pretty soon.
So, are you suggesting that we wait to adopt this later?
I don't
maybe
know
as
that
part
it
of the
would ever be adopted. I think it may just be a work plan that's being considered as decisions are made. It would be a work plan. I was told that I'm not getting close enough to the mic. Work plan that would be considered into the future to be modified perhaps, but it's something we have as a reference depending upon what the commission actually decides should be happening next year.
So it's a fluid model.
Yeah, I think maybe if we're looking at what it's going to come to us as a vote, it says adoption of the staffing results, and it can change adoption to acceptance. And that one change of the word.
Contract language.
What?
I'm sorry.
Adoption is contract language.
So we can't accept it, we have to adopt it. I know, but in the end.
So we would need to have that detailed for us, the difference between those two phases when we come to vote.
Because right now we're discussing, we wouldn't even vote it either way.
Right, but it's good that we took some time and went through this. And does anybody on the commission object to this study?
Well, I'm interested, since Matthew has just said that it would be contract language, I'm interested in whether, I know that the study came out of the MOU, correct?
Correct.
And does the MOU require that they be adopted, or just that it happens?
It's a good question for the negotiating parties.
Yeah, I mean, I think Matthew's right that the verb used in the side letter is adopt. What I've understood that to be all along, whether it should have been accept or adopt, is that a study would be conducted and the commission would, that management and the union, as happened tonight, would present those findings and that would be accepted into the record. It wasn't, right now we don't have a set of standards to adopt or not. So from my perspective, I think I'd be comfortable with either verb, knowing that there is more work to be done around getting to the point where we actually have standards. But I don't see the study as having gotten us there yet.
Okay.
Would you agree with that, Matthew and Keo?
I think there is further work to be done with this study and ongoing conversations always about these issues.
Okay.
I'm not sure we have to accept it or adopt it or anything at this particular time or next month or the month after. I think we just need to keep considering it and see where we're going in the next 6 months or so.
Well, so it's going to change? The study will change?
Sure it could.
Possibly, not the study, but the decision we make about the staffing level, because this is 66 hours.
Right, that's
and
a
if
different...
it's not 66, if it's 62, then something else is going to happen.
Yeah, but I do see this as a study, not as Brett says, not a staffing levels decision. It's a study. So I personally would not have a problem putting it on the consent calendar next month, since we've had this discussion today, unless you change it in any way.
We've got a question.
I'm sorry.
Yes, just a second, Commissioner Grill. So do you anticipate changing it anytime in the near future? No. So I would like to just propose that we would put it on the consent calendar for the February meeting. And Commissioner Grill, did you have a question?
I don't know who said it, but somebody said that using all these variables, that it was scalable. And, whether it's 61 hours or 63 or whatever. I mean, I agree with Commissioner Hauser that it's probably, as frames of reference,
right.
It's probably a pretty good model to start working with, but it being a hard document, I'd say no.
Right, which means we could just adopt it as such. Commissioner McKenzie?
Well, I guess my concern is just the next steps. We have it and whatever, and, I've seen a lot of things go through, I don't know, city government where, they're studied and then the plan goes on the shelf. So I think this is really important, and I guess that's just my concern, is what's next. If we adopted it, or if we just accept it or put it, some sort of, yes, we got it, but that doesn't take us where we want to go. So, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think that will
plan?
be where we want to go when staffing levels are determined for our library system. So to me, that is something we would like to, I don't know if we could do it in the next budget process, or if we have it as a goal for the coming year after that. But it seems like this is very helpful information. We've got a lot of information on the facilities and how much staff is needed in those facilities based on that study.
Yeah, I mean, there was already a directive from me to Keo and Patrick to start developing staffing standards. And, obviously, when this started, I thought we'd see what this generated. And then with Patrick not being here anymore, it's kind of slowed that down. But certainly with the new HR manager, I would, direct that person to pick up that project and start working on it again.
And I think the commission would be delighted to see staffing levels in our library system. So unless somebody truly objects, to this. I would like to have it on the consent calendar next month. And thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Commissioner Hauser.
Somebody said something about this as part of the union contract or something.
It was a side letter agreement as part of the contract negotiations to do this study.
And I'm not sure what adopting this what the effect of that would be. So before I would vote on this, I'd want to have somebody tell me what is the effect with the union contract of adopting this. I have no idea. If it's just, okay, it's just a study and we're saying this is nice, then that's okay, because that's where I am.
Well, it sounds to me like that was something that was handled during negotiations and that both sides agreed to adopt a study that was done with the management and union representatives.
But I'm not in a position where I can say it's going to be 66 hours per week.
That's just a figure. I think our hours could be different, but they needed a baseline.
But I need somebody to tell me that that's what it merely means. I'm not going to accept what you're saying right there.
I mean, we can
Somebody
include
who can tell me, I don't know anything about labor relations or any of that kind of stuff. And because of that, I'm really concerned. And so I just want somebody to tell me what's the effect of adopting this in terms of the labor contract that we agreed to.
I mean, we can include the side letter with the agenda item next month so that everyone can see exactly. All
right. Well, I guess it won't be able to be on the consent calendar.
Right.
So I'll have it an action item.
We could put it over
by motion. Thank you.
Can you remember to do that, Ken, to include the side letter with the materials for this item? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the work a lot.
Hanging in there.
Yes. Okay, where are
Truth sufferers.
So, Brett, are you able to give your director's report item 11.1?
Yeah, I'd be happy to defer my time. You know, I would mostly cover what's in the written report, so I'm happy to answer anybody's questions. Otherwise, I propose to
All right, we'll
pass.
move on to 11.2, management report, and you have questions related to that?
You mean to his report?
Yeah.
Yes, I have one question, and that is, Brett, we know that the foundation leadership is going to change next Wednesday. Do we have an MOU before then?
No. I did meet with Alex Anderson, their president, and, let him know that I'd been working with their former executive director on this, but right now I think he's really swimming with just trying to keep everything afloat. So he asked to defer continued work on this until he's able to pick it up again.
Yeah, because their leadership may be completely different in terms of if they're open to that or not, and I'm sure you know that, but it changes next Wednesday.
I have two. One of them is the report on the Cloverdale reopen. I would just like to comment that I know that Commissioner Foxen had a really strong part in whatever happened there, and we appreciate your monitoring and working on that. The other thing I had a question is, there were interviews for the human services person, resource management. Is there a position has someone be selected, and are we offering anything? What's the timeline on that?
Yeah, we completed the interviews. We interviewed, 4 people? We did have a top candidate. We've done some reference checks, and now Ken and Q and I have to huddle one more time, probably tomorrow, and decide if we're going to make an offer or reopen it.
Okay. And my other thing that I thought was really fascinating was Reese and I did some math. And this report on the results of the election were really interesting. And I just wanted to call attention to the fact that Cotati, Rohnert Park, and Windsor were below the 67% in terms of those cities. And I don't know what that means, but I just thought that was an interesting thing to mention or note.
Wasn't Windsor the biggest below?
Yes, Windsor 60%. Cotati and Rohnert Park are very close. They're 65%.
Yeah, so Windsor was the real outlier, as opposed on the other way, Sebastopol was the other outlier on the upside.
Right, that's true.
I do want to comment that Sonoma was 0.5% higher than Sebastopol.
So Rohnert Park and Cotati really don't want to be publicly shamed, as Commissioner Smith brought up. But I would say that Rohnert Park is definitely better than the last time. So we did better than the last time. But I could not get these statistics to work out. I was only getting a 67.6% approval rating for the whole Measure Y so I don't know about these numbers, but I couldn't get it to work out. And I got the same number you got, which is 64.8% yes for Rohnert Park, but I only got 67.6% for the whole county. So did you do the whole one?
Yeah. I want to thank Jaylene for putting it together. It was her idea to include it. And I know she sent out an email late today with one math error she discovered. So go ahead and check that email. Maybe that fixes some of the math confusion.
So you may have to eat your words about Rohnert Park.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, Barbara. No, I didn't.
Any other questions about the monthly activities report? I am briefly taking over for Commissioner Whistler. All right, then let's move on to item 11.2.2, the monthly financial report. Ken?
That's the longest meeting in a long time.
Hi. Excuse me. Real quickly, the report starts on page 1.
Your mic's not on.
Okay.
There it is.
Real quickly, the report starts on page 103. You can see our cash balance continues to go down. It will show a big increase in December when we receive our first tax payment, property tax payment. Nothing real significant to talk about. You can see down below, way down below, there were 2 items that were over $25,000 that were paid during the month, the liability insurance payment and October utility expenses. As I can say, it's pretty much a normal month as we move along. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions. Okay, if not, thank you.
Takes us to the quarterly status report, performance management document 11.2.3. Comments from the commission?
Is that, I don't have that in front of me, but is that the one that's talking about what percentage of our reviews are current?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I find that I don't like that at all. And I think that we, in our next HR model and move forward, that we need to correct that discrepancy and bring that into the realm of, I think 2 to 3 or 4% is where it ought to be. None of this 25% monkey business.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Grill. Anybody else? Commissioner Foxen.
Well, I had one thought when I was looking at the information that Matthew and Gio presented about the discussions we've had around the working conditions of branch managers, et cetera. If they're stretched to that point, I could see why this would fall down to the bottom of the list and why we've been running behind.
So you're suggesting we should have more staff?
Yeah, I'm saying we should have more staff. And I think when we do have more staff and that has been, leveled off, I think we will see an improvement in this. It's just something that occurred to me this evening while I was sitting here looking at some of that stuff.
All right, any other comments? All right, so now we move to, thank you for that report. It's good to keep track of that. So I think we are now at 11.4, Sonoma County Library 2017 Annual Library Closures, May through December 2017.
We don't have it. It's not an action item. It's discussion.
Well, if you remember, we approved the closures through April. I believe
Yes.
it was 2 commission meetings ago.
Right.
As we move forward, obviously, we want to try to set the schedule for the rest of the year. And what you see here is a number of things. Well, it's based on us being open more often, obviously.
On Mondays.
On Mondays, correct. And it is the holidays that are spelled out in Section 11 of the current MOU. And so that's why we wanted to put this in front of you to begin discussion. But you'll see that there's a lot less library closures here than there used to be, which is a good thing.
It's very exciting.
Yes.
So,
because we're open on Mondays.
Is no motion on the table. It's a discussion.
Right. It's
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for this. It's nice to see a short list.
Yes, it's.
Although I know it's missing January through April, but I know. But you add those, it's a longer list.
Yeah, it'll be about a half a page, but that'll be
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Ken. Then we have no actions by resolution. We have no lab appointments, correct? I didn't miss anything there?
From the consent calendar 10.2, that was.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. So, yes, 10.2 was taken off the consent calendar, approved resolution for the State Board of Equalization contract, and I believe
Barbara requested it.
I just have a very brief comment. I checked with the city of Roanoke Park. I was just surprised, we get all our money through the county, basically, right? So this is because it's a sales tax. We have to have the Board of Equalization now involved. And they are going to charge us up to $175,000 to start this up and to implement the procedures and so forth. And so I was just wondering if this was an ongoing cost. So anyway, I checked with the city of Roanoke Park because they collect this extra sales tax that the city of Roanoke Park collected, and they pay about $10,000 per quarter, I guess. So there's the upfront startup fees. They're the only thing that I saw addressed in this. And I just thought I would just point it out in general to the commission or whoever that there will be some ongoing costs for them to do this work.
Yeah, it's similar to the property tax. I mean, the first one that you talked about, the cap, the $175,000, is to get it set up like you talked about. The other part is the ongoing compensation or whatever you want to call it. And it's kind of a service fee, similar to the property tax, that we don't see all the property tax from the county. They take off a certain percentage as a service fee. And the service fee for the Board of Equalization, from what I understand, is 1% of the tax collected. So that is an ongoing thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to point that out so the commission knew that it was more than just the startup cost. Thank you, Ken.
And secondly, the measure is where this money's coming from, and then it's in the measure that money's coming from the sales tax. And do we yet know exactly how much the election we're going to be assessed for the election?
We have not heard from the county, no.
Okay.
You asked about that, though, and had them guesstimate. What did they guesstimate when you asked?
It wasn't small. It was around $400,000.
That's my recollection.
My memory.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. But that also is coming out of the revenue.
All right. Any other comments on that? So since we took it off the consent calendar, I think we have to have a motion.
I move that we accept, that we so move.
Second.
No public comment? Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. So 10.2. And that takes us back. So we have no lab appointments, but we do have the option of, we do need to hear the commission liaison reports. So there was somebody who particularly wanted to give a commissioner report.
I just wanted to mention that that today I was given this paper from Petaluma, well, not from the library, was given it to me at Bridge. And basically, there's going to be a program at Petaluma Library, which is neither here nor there. It's about how to use Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Nextdoor, and Hoopla and Zinio. But I think the thing that's really significant that I want to mention is it's being presented by the AAUW. It's not a library program, but it's a program in partnership with one of the community, pretty important group in the community that's making the use of the library to present programs. And I just think this is wonderful. And, that people are seeing the library as a place to do things. That's all.
Yeah, pretty soon we're going to need bigger libraries to accommodate that.
Well, I'm planning on attending.
Thank you, Tim. Did you have any other report?
The only other quick report, and I'll be quick, is part of the labs. The lab in Petaluma is dealing with kind of understanding and looking at our bequests and what we have and what we're going to do with the bequest money. But we're in the process of trying to straighten that out. And I've spent the last 3 days reading lab minutes from 2092, I think.
Oh my gosh. Commissioner Heavenridge?
The Guerneville lab will meet on Wednesday unless the river rises and we can't get there. So,
Commissioner Neff?
The Windsor lab is tomorrow at 5 p.m.
Commissioner Hauser?
I don't have anything to report.
Commissioner Garcia? Oh, wait.
Two things. The the Sonoma County Library Foundation is going through some changes to find out what their mission is and has recommended that I not attend this next meeting because they're going to be electing officers and officers will be campaigning. So I will be attending in February, and we have a lab meeting in 2 weeks in Santa Rosa, and we are currently meeting with city council members, Santa Rosa city council members, with Pat Kuda on the Roseland Coalition.
Thank you. The Friends of the Sebastopol Library had a successful book sale recently, and they've also been doing a good bit of work selling books on the internet and being very successful at that. The lab is continuing to look for additional members, but we added a new member recently, and I think that's all I have to report. Commissioner McKenzie.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. Our lab met on December 20th. As I mentioned before, they're very interested in doing outreach about the Measure Y money, and there is one opening on our lab. And I would just like to say one other thing. Went to this program called Honeybee and the Pollinators, which is a program on December 17th, and it was so great because it was kind of like a break in the Christmas craziness. And Jake and I went, and Jake put on his mayor hat and thanked the Friends for paying for it and so forth. Anyway, we stayed afterwards and talked to these band guys, the very talented musicians, and they were so into it. And one of the guys was working like incredible hours at the Marin post office, and he took a break and he raced up and he came to our library and he played this. It was so important to him to play, and then he had to go back to work. And so besides the wonderful opportunity that we have for people to listen to programs and come to programs, we have opportunities for musicians to get a play too. And I just wanted to make a point for that because I really enjoyed it. And that's all. That's enough.
Commissioner Smith?
I have nothing to report.
Commissioner Ebright?
The next Santa Rosa lab is on January 25th. Nothing else to report.
Commissioner Foxen?
I just want to thank everybody for all the extra hours and the very, very hard work that they did to get the Cloverdale Library open. Thank you.
I have one thing to add.
Commissioner May?
Our third annual LumaCon is occurring on the last Saturday in January. And if you're around and haven't been to one, stop by. It's at the Petaluma Lucchese Center in Lucchese Park. It's quite amazing.
Wonderful. Commissioner Grill's going to phone his report in.
I want to thank Vicki. I want to thank Vicki for working so hard to try and get this video conference working. And the only reason it didn't work today was the cameras within the Santa Rosa chamber are not congruent with our system. But we ran a test patch, and it worked really great. And so I want to thank her for all that effort. And secondly, I was disappointed that I wasn't in the closed session today via phone. That's it.
Yeah, is that possible to do?
I don't know.
There's a phone on the table in that room.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, it's a small thing. I do want to say, compared to like when you were calling in from wherever it was,
Hawaii,
what they have on the table. Yeah, but right. What they have on the table, the new model. I mean, we ran it for about half an hour, 40 minutes, and it's really neat. I mean, you're right there. I can see your face. You can see my face. So it's close.
Well, good. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Grill. A report from the Director Evaluation Committee, 7.2.1.
Yes, the Director's Evaluation Committee met this afternoon. No action was taken. Our next meeting will be prior to the February Commission meeting at 4 o'clock.
All right. Thank you. The 7.2.2 Finance Committee.
I'll be brief. We did meet on December 19th. All the members were there. Director there and CFO Neiman were there. No members of the public were there. As Ken pointed out, we were kind of waiting for the $10 million in tax revenue to come in. The cash balance was higher than we had budgeted due to underspending on salaries and wages, and the COLA did not take place until October 2nd, which was part of that extra higher cash balance than we expected. We discussed how to get commissioners' input regarding priorities on both the upcoming budget and the Measure Y funds, but we didn't really come to any specific conclusions about that. I already talked about earlier about the way that we didn't quite get to the specifics of the budget adjustment, but I've already explained that. And we had also agendized the further discussion of fund balance policy and also the OPEB action plan, but we were not able to take action on either of those, so those are going to be carried forward to our January meeting. Both the January meeting and the February meeting, we have to go out from the third Monday to the fourth Monday because both the third Mondays of January and February are holidays. So anyway, the next meeting will be January 20th at 3 o'clock in the conference room. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 7.2.3, the Advocacy Committee. Commissioner Fox.
We met this afternoon and continued our work in deciding on the best ways to build the foundation for advocacy. We talked a lot about the labs, but we began talking about community, and we'd like each commissioner to begin thinking about what kind of connections they have within their community. Not only the organizations that they might be part of or know about or have had some contact with, but government officials that they have contact with, and even more, just people that they know out there that they could possibly interact with in some way that might be positive for the library. And eventually we're going to ask for a list from everybody so we have some idea of what we're dealing with. So, thank you.
All right, I think Commissioner Garcia has already updated us on the foundation, so we'll go to the Ad Hoc OPEB Retirement Committee, which has not met due to the holidays and illnesses. And I have contacted the county, though, and have gotten some information on how they designed their pension committee, review committee, and we'll try to be sending something to Ken shortly on that within the next week. And the last one, 7.2.6, the Standard Operating Procedures Committee met last week? Friday. And we developed a draft protocol plan for the Measure Y Oversight Committee, and that draft has been sent to Brett and to Ken for their comments, and after that I believe we'll be presenting it. And we hope to have it finalized by March or April, so the Commission will see a draft in the next couple months.
I have one quick question for the Finance Committee. And Ken, maybe, where are we in the process of the audit, and when is the audit expected?
They will be at the next Finance Committee giving their report, and then it should come to the full commission in February.
Okay, so it's moving along. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Any last words, or can we all go home now?
Well, we have
Oh, right.
16.
We have to find items to include in the commission notes. So if you want to, item 15. So suggestions? The facilities report will be on the February agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, no, that's not true. The facilities master plan's going to be on the March agenda.
This is not quite related. Well, let's see. I want to talk about that when we get to
Well, as you think of things, please feel free to send them to me, and I will relay them to Jane. And there were a couple things, I think, from our previous meeting that we didn't include in this last commission note. So Jane and I need to get together to talk about that and see what can be salvaged from that for the next group. All right, so...
I have two questions, of course. One of them is, I think we should say in that lab report, the labs are going to be involved in discussions about the hours. And secondly, I want to double check, are those reports going to all the lab members throughout the county and also to the elected officials in the different cities? Okay, I just wanted to double check that.
How about something on the media labs?
Yeah, the partnership, yeah, that'd be cool.
That's nice.
And then reemphasize the Monday openings in April. I mean, we can keep putting that in every commission notes for a while.
Okay. And agenda items for the future commission meetings, I think we have a lot. So, sorry.
I would like to consider how we're going to study what we're going to be doing for next year in terms of the budget and why. And I think we need some study sessions where we can sit down and actually spend some time where we have some suggestions. It's going to cost this much for this, and we're going to spend this much for that, so we see where we're going. Because I think I said it, I have a fear we're going to run out of money. And, $400,000 for the ballot, and things like that. So should we be putting that on the next agenda, or should it be on the agenda every month until June, or what? I'm not sure how we want to do that, because I want to start having that discussion on a regular basis.
So one thought would be to talk about that a little bit more in depth on the 23rd at the Finance Committee, and make a determination at that point how best to break it up. And I think that'll be an opportunity for Ken and Brett to help us figure out how that might work and how we would get that information and what their plans are for the budget session now. Would that work for you?
I want to make sure it's happening going forward.
Okay. So that'll be on the Finance Committee agenda to discuss and hear your ideas and thoughts on how that could work.
Now, one other thing that I think needs to be brought up is we've discussed having some kind of commission retreat, study day, workshop. Yes. So we talk about what we should be doing instead of dealing with all these agenda items.
Right, and we had
need
started
to schedule that.
Right, we had started out to do that, and Commissioner Foxen had done some research on that, and we need to get together and hash that out. I think Commissioner Smith and I were going to meet with her on that, but different things have come up to prevent that.
I'd like to have it on the next agenda for report.
Okay.
Just so it's there and we discuss it.
All right. The retreat workshop, whatever we decide to call it.
Study day. Retreat feels too much like kumbaya.
It sounds like we have to pray.
Yeah, but I just want to. I want to be sure. It seems to me 5, 6 agenda items have been suggested during this meeting. I don't want them to get lost somehow. So I need to have assurance that we've scheduled
Did you make a
lot
note
of
of them?
things to talk about in the next few months.
Booklet, aren't you writing that on the agenda?
Did you by chance, Jane, there were a couple, did you by chance make note of things that people said? Okay, oh, okay. Okay, we'll try to capture those, but I agree. There were a couple things in passing, I thought, I need to write that down. But didn't have a chance to. All right. So now item 17, the next meeting will be February 6th, 6:30 p.m. in these chambers. And I say that we are now adjourned by acclamation.
Aloha.
Aloha.